Potensic just released a brand new remote that has an integrated screen, which is really cool. I've had many comments from people on this channel requesting exactly this, so it's really nice that Potensic is listening and continuing to innovate. So let's talk about it. So right away, I want to give you my first impressions on this. It feels and looks really nice. I noticed right away that the antennas are not that flat one that they had on the original or the latest one that they've had, the latest release here in the Atom 2. I was kind of surprised by that actually, that they didn't stay with this style because it seemed to work pretty well and it was nice and compact. But regardless, that's what they've done here. This one has the same transmission distance of the old one with the PicSync 4.0 or that 10-kilometer transmission distance. And the screen brightness is about 700 nits, which isn't bad, but there's more on this later. I did a little test just to see what that looks like. Now it does support the 9-volt 3-amp fast charging, which is good, and the charging time is similar between the two, and the operation time is a little bit less on this one, which makes sense because it's got the screen to light up. So it's a 3-hour operation time versus a 4-hour, but it totally makes more sense for driving a lot more electronics here. Now the sticks are buried like before in the bottom of the remote. However, I did find that for some reason, these are a lot tighter in this one, and maybe it's just me, but they were really in there good. So don't be surprised if you break a couple fingernails the first few times you use this one. So they're not going to fall out because maybe they had a problem with that. I'm not sure, but they are in there a little bit tighter than they were on the first one. All the controls seem to be the same. Nothing really different that I could tell as far as the layout or the buttons themselves. They looked exactly the same. So there wasn't any learning curve really between what I had before and the new one. Now to use this, I'm going to have to do a lot of things that you wouldn't have to do if you got this with a drone. Like if this came as a Fly More package, a lot of this stuff would be done that I'm going to go through right now. First, I had to charge it up, and then I'm going to have to activate it with your account. But then there's going to be a bunch of firmware as well. So it's going to go through, update a bunch of the firmware. Then you're going to have to actually pair this to the drone. So there's a little process you do. You press a couple buttons on the drone, and it will go through and it will pair to the drone. Really, what this is there is a Android operating system in here. So basically, it's an Android computer, if you will. If you swipe down twice on it, you'll get some few options that are kind of system things like airplane mode, and you can do screenshots. And this is where you can access the screen record, which is one of the really cool things with this, is you can record this screen while you're flying, kind of like what you could do with your phone, but it's integral and baked right into the remote itself here. And the way that the recording works is that there is internal memory in this. So when you record, it records to the internal memory. And they also did add an SD card to this. So you put this little SD card here. So you can put this little SD card in here as well, and you can transfer your files over to that SD card. And then you can take that SD card out and you can put it in your computer or read it on your phone or wherever you want to go with it, so that you can have your files transportable as well. Now, of course, I did take it out for some test flights because I was really interested to see how it worked. It takes a little longer to boot than I expected just from turning it on. It took almost like a minute, maybe a little bit less than that. It seemed like a long time. At first I thought it was locked up, but it said Potensic on it, but it just wasn't doing anything. So like a computer, it took just a little bit longer to boot up than I was expecting. Now holding this remote, it was really nice to hold in a hand. It was very similar to what the old remote was when you had your phone or your other device in this. Although I did like the grip a little bit better on the old one. This has more like a rubbery soft touch. It just feels kind of a little more premium. This is like a little more plasticky. It's not quite so rubbery, so it does have a little bit more of a plasticky feel. So I think that's a little bit of a downgrade from the soft touch on the first one. Now, I wanted to record the screen while I was flying, and that's underneath this little double swipe here. And once you record, there is a little timer that pops up, and it goes over the telemetry a little bit, and you can move that over by just kind of touching and dragging it over. So a little tip there in case that is just over top of something that you want to see. In a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the recorder and the files and kind of how I dealt with that, but we'll come back to that. Overall, the operation and the controls were nice. I did a little manual orbit just at the visual line of sight, and I found that the connection was actually better than the original in my case. I see a lot of people talk about connection and it gets out and it disconnects. I didn't have any disconnection. I didn't even have anything that really stuttered. With the original remote, when I would get out kind of about that visual line of sight, depending upon if there were some trees or something that were kind of in between me and the drone, it would scold me a little bit and say to point the antennas at it or something like that. But this one, I had no prompts at all. I didn't have any hesitation. So in my limited test, I seem to have a better connection with this one with the antennas on it. And how about that manual orbit? Not bad if I do say so myself. You might be asking yourself, well, what's the benefit of having a remote like this with a built-in screen versus just taking one and putting my own device in it? Well, the obvious thing is you don't have to have another device. When you go and grab this out of your case, it's ready to go. You turn it on. There's no getting your phone, loading the app, making sure that's good, connecting a cable. A lot of times there's compatibility issues with apps and phones and they lock up or don't work or things like that. So it's just simpler having everything together like this, no cable slews or anything like that. So just fewer points of failure really. And just a note as well, I mentioned about pairing the new remote, and if you pair the new one, the old one won't be paired anymore. And this is pretty common with remotes. Now, if you want to use the old one as a backup, you still can. For instance, if this one had a problem or you ran it out of battery or something and wanted to use the other one, you can use the other remote as well, but you're going to have to repair it every time that you want to do that. So it'll work in a pinch, but it's just a little extra step you're going to have to go through. And I mentioned the internal recording when you're doing a screen record, which is really nice. They do end up internally on the kind of operating system itself here, on the drive itself that's inside of here. So you can transfer those to the SD card if you want, or you can plug it into a PC with the USB cable right into the USB-C port, and then it shows up like a regular drive, and you can simply copy the files off of here if you want. Now the smart transfer that worked before from the drone to your device so that you could suck the files right out of there and then you could have them resident on your device, that doesn't work with the new remote. Even though it kind of replicates your device, you can't transfer using the smart transfer from the drone to this remote. You still have to use your phone with the Potensic app on it, and then you can use the smart transfer and transfer the files from the drone to your phone, but not to this remote. It just doesn't work. So you're still going to need your device for that then if you want to transfer files from the drone like that through that smart transfer. So one of the interesting things about using a built-in screen like this, and this is for any manufacturer, is that you're kind of at the mercy of what they decide is bright enough. Now this one comes in at 700 nits. So it's a little bit of a trade-off because you know that I love to use a tablet, and a tablet that I use is a super bright one and kind of rugged just for that reason, because it's really bright. If you're out in the sunshine and you try to see the screen and you're trying to see what your telemetry is, for instance, it's pretty darn tough with a 700 nit screen. Regular generic kind of phones like you and I probably have are about that brightness. Now, there are some really expensive ones, $1,000, $2,000 phones that can go up to the 2,000 nits, for instance, something around that. And that Huge Rock tablet that I use is like a 2,600 nit. Maybe in the future they'll make that brighter, but I just wanted to point that out that when you use this, of course, you're limited to whatever they put in the brightness. If it's too dim for you, you're just kind of out of luck. Now, really, I think Potensic has done a pretty darn good job with this. It feels really nice. It looks nice. It's clean. I think it's well thought out. No big bugs that I could find. So, I mean, for their first stab into this market, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Now, I don't know what the costs are going to be yet. If I find out by the time that I publish this video, I'll put the costs up here if you can buy this separate, or if it's only going to be available with new Flymore packages. I imagine they'll do both, that you can probably upgrade or purchase it as an option in a Flymore package. I'll make sure that I put links up here so that you can know what it costs and what the availability is going to be. Now, something I hadn't really thought about is that in the case, there's this nice little spot for the remote to go in there, the old remote, and it fit in there real nice. And now the new one is much larger, obviously, because it has a screen on it. So I was a little worried when I tried to put it in there that it's really tight. Now, it does fit. I'm going to have to shove some things over a little bit more than I was before, but it does fit in there. But just keep that in mind if you've got a custom fit case or something. I see a lot of people have some nice cases. You might struggle a little bit with this going in the case, so just keep that in mind. Whew, so that's all I have for this fella. I hope you found it useful, and if so, smack that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, we'll see you in the next video.